Hi, my name is Noah T.Y., and you're tuned in to another episode of Young Black Equestrians.
I am.
I am.
I am.
I am a young.
I am a young.
I'm a young.
I am.
And I am a young
Black.
A young black.
Young.
Black.
A young black.
Black equestrian.
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 Black equestrian.
Equestrian.
Black equestrian.
equestrian.
Black equestrian.
I'm a young black equestrian.
I am a young black equestrian.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Young Black Equestrians with your hosts, Abriana Johnson
and Caitlin Gooch.
Today, we have a special guest, Noah T.Y. of Steady Horse, and I'm so excited to get him on the podcast today because there are so many questions that we have. So welcome to the show, Noah.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad to be here. Nice to meet y'all.
Nice to meet you too.
So briefly, for people who do not know who you are, tell us about yourself, where you're located, and what you do.
Sure, yeah. So I'm in the great state of Texas and been here for about 17 years. I'm originally from the East Coast, but a lot of my family kind of migrated this way. And I'm from a huge family, like a really gigantic family. I'm one of 10 brothers and sisters. And so like 7 of us are now like in Texas, and my granddad was military and in the Air Force, and he did basic training here. And so he decided to retire in San Antonio, Texas. And then my parents are here. So this is home, and I met my wife here as well. So this is kind of my home now. But what I do is I coach people especially people that have issues with confidence or fear with their horses. I coach them and help them to really kind of work through those fears and make sense of them so that they are knowledgeable enough to move forward in an educated way. And my number one goal with all of that is like helping people to be safe. And that's kind of why I do what I do, because I see so many people that have accidents with their horses that are just like totally avoidable. Like most horse accidents can be avoided. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the space that I occupy, like helping people to be as safe as they possibly can with their horse. And so it doesn't matter whether it's, a brand new beginner. I have a riding academy where we teach really young kids, or whether it's one of my students who has competed internationally or at the highest levels, Olympic levels. Doesn't matter. Everybody wants to ultimately be as safe as possible while we are enjoying these gifts that God has given to us.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Safety is number one.
Yes. I was like, that's right up Caitlin's alley. So how did you get into horses in the first place? I know you said that, your family's in Texas now, but how did you guys get into horses? Or are you the only one in your family into horses?
So I have a sister that's really into horses, and my mom is really into horses as well. And so like I got my passion from my mom. I started riding when I was 7. At that time, we were living in New Jersey, and my mom went to this equestrian center, and again, like one of 10, right? So she was like, "Hey, will you make me a deal for all 10 of my kids? What can we do here, right?" So she made it happen, right? And so she made a deal with them, and we were able to take our lessons once a week, and that kind of is what cracked open the door. And then from there on, particularly like my sister and myself, just horse crazy. Every opportunity we got, we wanted to be with a horse, to smell a horse, to work in a barn, whatever we could do. And it just kind of escalated from there. And then my parents, when we were still young, they ended up getting a farm and having all kinds of animals and stuff. And so it just kind of perpetuated from there. But yeah, I was 7 years old when I got on my first horse, and like for a lesson by myself, other than like pony rides at like a fair or something. Mm-hmm. And everybody always, oh man, you got great balance, you're so good with them. But I never had any fear. I was one of those kids who was just fearless. And it's interesting though, I got thrown from like really high dollar lesson horses when I was 7 years old. I got thrown twice. And hindsight's 2020, but like becoming an adult, I looked back at that and I'm like, whoa, like, there's no way I would put any of like the kids in like, there's no way they're climbing on a horse where something like that would happen. Right. But I learned something back then. I was fine. When you're young,
you bounce.
You shake it off, and you suck it up, and you go on, right? And that was the thing. You get back on your horse, type thing. Mm-hmm. But I learned something. I learned a bad habit back then. That falling, that getting hurt, that was just a part, right, of horseback riding. Like that was a part of being an equestrian. And my views over the years kind of shifted where I'm like, no, that should not be the norm. That shouldn't be the expectation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. And I don't know the situation around the falling, but kind of the behaviors leading up to it, whether it be human or horse, if you start getting into that habit, it's like, no, this has to be enjoyable for both of us.
Right. You be breaking limbs and having bruises every time you ride.
Right.
Nobody has time for that. Nobody has time for that. So what is one of the biggest challenges you faced with horses, and what did you learn from that?
So I would say the biggest challenge for me was learning how to be safe. My mom got into a really bad wreck with a horse, and she had a horse that had gotten sick and passed away, and so she was looking for a new horse, and I was helping her at that point to try and find a horse. Now I was a teenager at that time. I think I was like maybe 18, somewhere around there, and I really pushed her towards a particular horse, and his name was Justice. He was an ex-police horse, retired from that business, and he was supposed to be like, I'm like, this is a good horse for you, Mom. Like, this will be the horse. And so she gets the horse home, and she's riding on the ranch, and she's going on a trail ride, and like this seasoned police horse, like a branch kind of cracked in the brush or something. And he just freaked out. Like he took off. And she was saying like the harder she tried to like stop him, like there was no stopping him. There was no one rein disengagement. There was none of that. Like he just had it in his mind. He was clamped down on that bit, and he was just running, hightailing it. Like nothing was stopping him. So then like they came to a top of a hill, and this is common. A lot of horses, when they run up onto the top of the hill, they'll buck out and kick. And that's what he did. She was just trying to hold on, and he ended up throwing her. And so she came like over the top of him, and then he trampled her too. So, I mean, it was a really bad accident. So she nearly had to have her leg amputated. It was that bad. But like, thank God, like she made pretty much a full recovery. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that really took a hit, the thing that took a hit was her confidence. Like she had a lot of fear. And so once she finally got to the point where she was cleared to ride again, she was having a lot of trouble emotionally and mentally, like, diving back in and handling those fears, because they were very real fears for her. And so I remember she, because this is something that my mom and I especially like really, really share, our love for horses. And so my mom's like my best friend. Like we've always called each other best friends for like forever. And we've always had a really good relationship. And so like when she told me that, I'm thinking about hanging up riding, I was like, whoa. And she said, that she felt like she had pressure from two different areas. One were like friends and family, because like, people care about her and like, hey, maybe you should find a different hobby, maybe you should do something else. Yeah. But like horse people, right? Like it's not just a hobby, it's a passion. It's something that like, I mean, non-horse people don't understand it when you talk about this, that rush and that feeling and that connection, and just when you take in the smell, like all of that stuff, people are like, what? Shoveling poop and doing this and doing that. And so for her, like she was getting the pressure from the outside of people saying, you're getting older, horses are dangerous, we want to set you up to be to do well. And then she felt guilty too, because like when you have an accident like that, it doesn't only affect you, but it affects like you and your family and the people around you and all of that as well, your finances. Like there's a lot that happens. So but then she said she also was getting like this internal pressure from her, right, where she felt that because she was now older, that this was kind of like the nail in the coffin, like that she should not have been riding in the first place, because she felt like her balance wasn't as good as it used to be, her reaction time wasn't as quick as she used to be, and she wasn't as strong as she used to be. So she's like, maybe this is the best route to go. So when she told me that she was wanting to hang it all up and walk away, from ever riding again, that was, I would say that crushed me. But that was one of my biggest challenges, because I'm like, there's got to be a better way, right? Mm-hmm. There's got to be a way to approach things where it's not, rough and tough and having to be super strong and yank on horses and all that kind of rough and tough stuff. Like there's got to be a way where you can continue to do what you enjoy and love without having to put yourself in harm's way. Mm-hmm. And so it was really at that point that I kind of dug in and decided like, no, like I'm going to scrounge up all the money I've got, every resource, every connection, every person. I'm going to try to reach out to everybody I knew. And like back then, there weren't like social networks like we have now. We weren't as connected as we are now. So, I mean, it was a lot of creative work to find people, literally all over the world and be like, hey, will you teach me? Can I work with you? I'll work for you. I'll do this. I'll do that. And so I had a lot of incredible experiences in that journey. But what I learned in that journey is, there's so many ways to skin a cat. There's so many different ways that people work with their horses. But what I noticed is with all the different experiences that I had, and some of them were just incredible and they informed the way that I work with horses now. Some of them were terrible, where I worked for people who were, abusive to the horses, didn't take care of them. I mean, really, really bad stuff. But the ways where people had more respect and love and genuine care for the horses, those were the horses that ultimately made like the safer, more steady horses. And so I learned that, and it was a tough thing for me to learn, because I always was taught, especially like, growing up in like cowboy culture and things like, the harder you ride them, the faster, the more wet saddle blankets you put on them, like that's what made a good broke solid horse and all that kind of stuff. Now, like what I had to learn is that you have to really come from, you got to come from a place of compassion, right? Like you got to come from a place of love. And so what I learned is that like our relationship with horses is really like, it's a relationship, and like that's where the focus has to be. And when you have like a strong relationship, and people know this, like I'm not saying anything new, like people know that when you have a strong relationship with your horse, like that trumps everything else. Like everything else is gonna work out really well. So that was a challenge, and there was a lot for me to learn to get to that point. But I'm glad that I did, because it gave me more clarity about the process and things that we are missing in horsemanship today that, really, I think people take for granted, but are so important.
Yeah.
You have a book on the way?
What do I have? I do have a book. I do have a book on the way, but it's not out yet.
Oh, I was like, is this a trick question? I don't know, but that's cool. I would love to get you.
Yeah, I do have a book in the works, but it's not out yet.
Well, congrats in advance.
Yes,
thank you.
Something that you said about, working with the people that didn't take care of their horses really stood out to me, because I feel like sometimes we have to put ourselves in situations and, gain these experiences to know what we don't want to do. And so I
Yeah,
feel like a lot of times when people are going out and looking for work and student jobs and volunteering and, and they get in these, you know, not ideal situations, they're like, oh, this is what the horse industry is, or this is what
Mhm.
this job is like, when that's not the case. But sometimes we do have to experience things so we know what we don't want to do. Like, I worked in a call center. I know I don't want to do that ever again in my life, but it was
Sure, yeah.
good experience for learning how to communicate problems. But that stood out to me because I feel like a lot of times, now that we're, having open conversations about being a person of color in a barn environment, it's
Sure.
like, okay, yeah, some jobs are gonna suck, and you take that and say, okay, this is not anything that I will ever duplicate, kind of thing.
Yeah, and like, I mean, you're so on point with that, right? Because I feel like the tendency is when there is conflict, right? Like when you're in a situation that's uncomfortable, or when you're in an environment that's less than ideal, like you said, like it's like and this is how I was 100%. Like when I was in that situation, I was like at one point, and this person I was working with, like that I'm thinking of, like this was a notable person in the horse world. Like you would know this person's name if I mentioned their name. And so at one point I was like, I want this experience, but on the other point, I'm like in this little self-righteous, but like everybody's where they're at, right? And I like what you said, you take the experiences, and sometimes it's learning what you don't want to do or what not to do. And learning how to, like, also in an environment like that, like how to break through and still be your most genuine self as well. So I mean, needless to say, that relationship didn't last for very, very long, but it was an incredible, valuable time in my life because it taught me a lot. And sometimes some of the best lessons aren't in the ideal circumstances that we would hope for, right?
Right. Right. So tell us a little bit about this process, because you said your mom's accident was like around when you were 18 or so. Did you, like, prior to then, like, say I want to be a horse trainer? Like, what did you want to be when you were growing up? Like, did you go to school? Like, how do you end up being Mr. Steady Horse today?
Sure, yeah. So like, no, at the time I did not want to be a horse trainer, like, but I just wanted my mom to be safe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's funny because like what I thought that would look like, 18-year-old me was like, oh, I'll just learn how to ride better and break these horses and, get them to mind. And, but it looked nothing like that. You started pulling at threads and there was so much more to it. So at that time, I ended up putting myself through college, like training horses. Like that's how I paid for my tuition. That's what I mean. And so like I would literally train horses in the morning. There were some facilities and barns where I worked at where they had like, indoor arenas and lights and stuff like that. And I loved those facilities. So I could train like at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. But like I spent as much time on the horse's back as I possibly could. And really just finding people that were willing enough to pour into me. And then when I had an opportunity to travel, like over the summer or over a spring break or something like that, like I would always have something lined up so that I could get with someone to learn more. But I mean, I went to school like a lot of people, not intending to become a horse trainer or a horse clinician or whatever. I actually went to culinary school. I did my undergrad in sociology and political science. And then I was working at a bank when I finally decided that, you know what, like I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to focus everything on the equine side of things, because like that is where I lit up and that is where I had like the most passion and that's where I felt like the most alive. So
Was that transition
I wish.
for you?
It was. I remember going to my boss and putting my 2 weeks in. His name is Brian. I can see his face and he says, we hate to lose. He's like, is it the money? Can we do something there? Is it, the hours? I know, you just got married and you got a kid coming, what can we do? And I'm like, no, man, it's just not for me, And he says, well, where are you going? What are you doing? What do you got lined up? And I said, like, I'm going into horses like full time. Like, I'm going to make my living, everything off of horses. And you could tell this guy is like, okay, well, good luck, bud. He was thinking, yeah. So it was scary. I think that the biggest thing for me too, at that point, being newly married and about to be a new dad, is like wanting to make sure that I could provide for my family. And so, like, when you're providing, and this is any entrepreneur, right? Like, when you are basically, and at that point, I was going to be the sole breadwinner. Like, when you are in that position, like, there's a lot of stress, right? Like, a lot of anxiety. You want to make sure that you can deliver, that you can perform, that you can provide for your family, not let them down. So it was stressful, but it also caused me to like work so hard. I have worked with and trained so many horses. I mean, so many horses. I've started, and this is just horses I've started, not problem horses. I've started personally myself over 500 horses. And like, that's me, like, not ranch hands or any helps or anything like that. I've worked with a lot of people one-on-one. I transitioned I used to do like a after school riding program, and it's turned into a riding academy and all these kids and stuff like that. But like, I mean, any way that I could provide for my family through horses, I was doing. I even had I had a pony company where we would we had a pony carousel we'd set up over by the Alamo in downtown San Antonio. And we had ponies going, and we'd set up at a kiddie park, and we had carousels all over town. I mean, anything, carriage company, you name it. But that was my commitment to myself, that I was going to always do what I loved, which was the equestrian side, for sure. So it wasn't easy. There was a lot of anxiety. And there were times, I'm very grateful to my wife, because there are a lot of times where we did without, in order to maintain like the sanity and the health of the lifestyle that we wanted to live. So.
Wow. So many different career paths when it comes to horses, and people don't even understand, like, there's so many different ways you could go, and a lot of us don't even start out in the horse industry. It's like we work these 9-to-5 jobs, and they were like, okay, I'm definitely not doing this anymore. Take me where the horses are.
Yeah, I was about to say, Caitlin has a degree in sociology too.
Oh, wow.
And I work with kids at a daycare and at a boys and girls club. And when it's like the summertime, I cannot handle it, because I'm like, I should be outside with people.
Yeah, I get
not
that.
indoors.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you mentioned like all the different industries there are. It's crazy. It is nuts. Like how many different industries there are. And like, I'm always still just learning about new and different industries. And I just find that so fascinating. I partner with a lot of different companies and organizations, and, from a supplement organization to someone that makes like, it's just all kinds of, special pads for horses, to people who are making, foot stuff. And it's just so neat how much stuff there is out there. It's pretty cool. It's fascinating.
Mm-hmm. You literally can choose to do anything in the world and say, like, I only do it for horses. And like, boom, there you go. Like, now you're in the horse industry.
Yep.
It's wild. It is wild. So what is one of the most common misconceptions people have when they come to you with their problems?
I think I'd say probably generally most people always think there's something that they need to change about their horse. They need to train their horse better, do this better, do that better, for their, have their horse perform better. When really it's really about us, right? It's so funny. Now, let me just be clear. I have no like degree in psychology or anything like that. But I always feel like when I'm working with people and their horses, like I feel a little bit like a shrink, right? I don't know. I don't think you're supposed to say shrink. I don't know. What do you call a shrink? A psychologist, a psychiatrist,
Yeah. We get what you say.
a counselor. So like I feel like, the person's always like, my horse does this, my horse does that, my horse, and it's always about the horse. But it's like, let's talk about you. Like, right? Like what are you doing for your horse? How are you meaningfully connecting with them? Like I'm big on making sure that you are one that you change your approach. So stop, focusing everything about how you feel and really change to where you're focusing on how is my horse doing? How are they uncomfortable? How am I nagging them? How am I making their life hell, right?
Mhm.
And then once you have that kind of change in the way you approach your horse, it's, for me, the next thing is like connecting with them in a way that's meaningful. And it's going to look different with every horse and every person. Like, people, have different ways that they express their love for each other or appreciation and how they hope to be appreciated and things like that. And horses are the same, right? And so really finding the way to connect that's the most meaningful for your horse. And then it's really about having communication. And so again, just like any relationship, right? Like any counselor will tell you that if you don't have good, open, clear communication, things will break down. So I like to really help people take their communication and make it clearer and simpler. Sometimes we're trying to do really big, huge, fancy maneuvers, depending on what your discipline is or what you're doing or whatever, which is great. They're cool, but there's a basis for that maneuver, any really fancy maneuver, in something that's very simple. And if we start back from those foundations, we really present it to our horse in a way that they can really have confidence and mastery over that. And then I think like the last part of that that's huge is like confidence. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people think of confidence as like, well, it's like this magical thing where I just work up the nerve and the bravery and then I'm confident, but it's really more just math, right? Like statistically speaking, you have high confidence in something if you can replicate it like over and over and over again. And so if I can, connect with my horse, communicate with my horse, and we're working well together and say, for me, I'm good with 9 times out of 10. If 9 times out of 10, like we're getting some really good, stuff going, well, then I have confidence and my horse has confidence in me. And so again, like nothing I teach is rocket science or anything like that, but it's really about going back to the basics, simplifying things and really approaching it in a way that is ultra super focused on the horse and giving them the best understanding possible so that they can be like the partner that we want them to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do you track your clients' progress?
Yeah. So there are a number of ways. So I don't do as much, like I do clinics and stuff like that, but I don't do as much one-on-one like I used to years ago. So right now, a couple of things. So there's people that are involved in like the steady horse. Like we have like a video club and library, and we have courses and stuff that people put out that people can get. But where I have the most fun is where I am able to work with people one-on-one. And so now, especially since COVID, we were doing this before COVID, but especially now since COVID, people are more comfortable with a Zoom call, FaceTime. And so we have a coaching program. And what that coaching program looks like is when people want to work with me, what we do is the first thing I do is I get with them and we set up a roadmap of where they want to go and how to get there. Again, because every horse, every person is just so different. So, we talk about like how many times can you realistically, like, are you able to work with your horse? Do you have just 5 minutes? You have 20, you have 30 minutes, whatever it is, we'll figure out like a way that it's going to work for you. And so that's kind of like the first step. And then once I give them the ways to start connecting and then communicating with clarity, we're checking in with each other. a lot of people do what are called like video reviews, where they'll either take a video of what they're working on with their phone or whatever, and have somebody take it. Or a lot of my students use, I don't have one, but they're like these fancy little
Pivo or
yeah, there you go. Yeah, one of those things, right? That
like
track
$800.
It would probably be cheaper than my camera guy though. So, but they so they get good videos. Like they get good videos, or I have a lot of people too who will just do FaceTime or Zoom and have somebody hold it while they're riding. So in those instances, I can give them feedback in real time, or we're able to sit back, which sometimes is even better after the fact, when they can look at themselves on the screen and we can go by kind of frame by frame. Because like when you're writing, like I have so many bad writing habits, right? And so when I ride with my mentors, who I'm still in really good relationship with, and I'm so blessed to have so many mentors, but there's a couple in particular that I ride with regularly. They're like, no, what's wrong with you? Fix this, fix that, do that, but I don't realize it. But when years ago, when they had me start to take footage of what I was doing, then I'm like, oh, well, yeah, it sticks out like a sore thumb. So that's kind of how we track progress. And for me, it's not like a time frame thing. That's the other thing. Like there's always this idea of, 90 days to start a horse, or, a good broke horse is, 120 days or whatever, right? It's really about moving only as far as the two of you are connected. And so there's something very intentional that I have the people that I coach do, and they're called connection checks. And so in those connection checks, like what they're doing is there's some points and things that they already know to look for, but I'm like, so tell me about how this is going. Okay, good. Well, how can we improve? How can we give more clarity? How can we do more simplicity? How can we go back and connect deeper? Okay, great. And then when we're connected here, okay, now let's move on to the next step, because then you and your horse feel confident and feel like you're in a good place where you can move forward, make progress, and you're both going to get a W, get a win.
Yeah. That's cool. I'm new to this whole coaching model, so I like hearing this information. It's very nice.
Sure.
Nice to hear. So what do you have as your vision for the future, for either yourself or for your business, or kind of just where are you looking to go with this?
Yeah. So, I mean, right now, I guess the surface level stuff is like the coaching, the courses, the training and connecting with people, and really friends and clients in a way that will help them to build a deeper and better relationship with their horse. Like, I really want people to know that you don't have to put yourself in peril. You don't have to get hurt. It doesn't have to be like you're rolling the dice every time you climb on a horse. It just doesn't, right? So that's one part of it, but also that there's a way to do it where you are, I call it leading your horse with love, where you are really, my goal with any horse that I work with is by the time I'm done working with somebody's horse, I want that horse to be more in love with me than they are with their owner. And so I tell them, because you're competing with the other horses, the barn manager, whatever you got, you're competing with all of that. And so you got to make sure that you get in there and that you connect with them in a way that's meaningful. So helping people to build those relationships and learn that perspective, how to lead with love, is huge. Really, really important to me. But on an even deeper level, for me, it's just about getting people in the habit of taking a hard look at their relationships, not just their horse relationship, but any relationship, because relationships are the foundation, I believe, for everything. I'm also the pastor of a church, and so in my church, I'm always preaching, as I think pastors should, love, right? God is love, and about how love transcends a lot of time. I'm getting a little deep here, but a lot of times like law and rules and what everybody thinks is supposed to be the law of the land, and people don't like to hear that. People like the structure and order, and love is kind of chaotic, and it makes you, when you're really like leading with love, it makes you do things or look at things in a different way, and it forces you to reevaluate relationships. So I might be teaching you something about your horse or how to be more kind or loving or seeing things from their perspective. But I'm also hoping that when you see the dark-skinned man down the road that's just, doing his job, cutting the grass or whatever, that you're not automatically in a place of fear. But maybe because you've exercised some love and have looked at your horse in a different way and have approached things in a different way, that maybe you're not looking at them in that way because you have more confidence in that relationship and what that could look like instead of drawing conclusions. And so, like, when you talk about race, it's obvious, right? But when you talk about horse, like it's no different. And it's not a black, white thing or brown or whatever thing, right? Like, it's like we all have to do better in our relationships and be very intentional, right? And really, lead with love. And so for me, like on a deeper level, like that is my hope with what I do, that people learn to love better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What you said made me think of, what is it people say? Like, ride the horse you have today, not the horse you had last week, not the horse that you want to have, ride the horse you have today. So it's the same thing with people, like, instead of making these assumptions and things like that, like deal with that one person right then. Do you have Absolutely. the evidence to come to conclusions about them? Probably not.
Right. Yeah.
You got to interact with the person, with the horse, with, what you have that day. So
Absolutely.
If you had a word of advice for the aspiring equestrians out there, what is something that you would tell them? You've given a lot of good information, but if they had, just came to you and said, what do I do to get where you are? What would you say?
Sure. Well, one, I am always the first person to say, one, I've just been really, really blessed. Like, I give all glory to God for the opportunities and things that he's presented in my life. So I recognize that. Like, I've been really, 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 really blessed. But on top of that too, is I think recognizing the power of who God makes us, right? And especially too, like, because this is young Black equestrians, because in our society, being a young Black man or a young Black woman, or in my case, a young Black man, but a young person of color, like in society, you're like bottom of the barrel, right? And things are changing. They also have been for a long time, so we're always hoping for more progress, faster progress, deeper progress. But like, it's interesting because even though, I'm going to kind of digress for a second because it's so important, I feel like, because even though like I'm a business owner, I'm an entrepreneur, I have lots of partnerships and, all that stuff, I've been very blessed. I'm a pastor of a church. Like, I've had people call the cops on me in my own church, right? And where people are worried about things. And so what happens, I feel like, is a lot of times people will and a lot of times it's subconscious, people will deny who they are, or they will, even though you might be proud of your Blackness or your color or whatever the case, whatever it is, a lot of times that subconscious message that society sends to you will still get to you. And it'll still tell you that you need to, don't come at it this hard right now, or don't be so forward, or don't lean out too hard because they might put you in this category or tell you this or tell you that. And I just want people to know, like, who you are is so precious, and God loves you so much, and like only you can tell your story, right? And so lean into who you are, because that is the most powerful tool that you have. Like, do you. So yes, seek out mentors and look for people to pour into you and to love on you and to really, teach you technical things in this or that, but don't ever get lost trying to be what seems like this when you're already right here. Like, who you are is just so powerful. Like, just integrate what you have and use it and grow and get stronger, but value this because nobody else has that on you.
Preach, Pastor.
Absolutely.
That's hilarious. Because that's like the only time that's actually worked. But thank you for that. That is great advice. Great advice. I love it. So at the end of our episodes, what?
Wait. I just realized we didn't talk about what horses you have now.
Oh, okay, yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we're a family of 5. So we got 5 horses. So there's there's more horses, but like that are our horses. So
okay.
I got 5 that I claim. I'll put it that way. So I'll tell you really quick about our horses. Yeah,
Okay.
I won't take up too much time because I could. So my wife's horse, his name is Tony, and he's a Clydesdale. And he's the cutest little furball, awesome little guy. And he's like, I don't know, like maybe 18 hands tall or something like that. He's huge. My youngest son, his horse is a Morgan, and his name is Bonner. And he's just, really quiet. My youngest son's 4 years old. So, I mean, just a really quiet, steady Eddie horse, really relaxed, pretty cool. Then my daughter has a paint horse, and that little horse is full of piss and vinegar. She's young and she's spunky, and my daughter just loves her. And then I have a son, my middle son, his name is Danny, and he has a horse named Chrome, and I've had Chrome for 15, 16 years, I think, or something like that. And so Danny's 7 years old and he rides Chrome. Now my horse, his name is Enoch, and he's an Andalusian, and he's a gray horse. And I actually got him I was training the horse, and the lady had mentioned that she wanted to sell him. And I said, well, if you ever do, let me know. And then down the road, she had contacted me, and she was having to move and life circumstances. And like the next day, I was hauling a truck and trailer to go pick him up. So those are our horses. Yeah.
Everybody rides. Oh my gosh.
I know, it's precious. Do they compete? Do your kids compete, or do you guys like do something in particular with them?
Yeah, sure. So my kids don't compete. Well, not right now. My daughter's open to it. I don't really push the competition on them right now. They're so young. When we were younger, we did, and I didn't really care for it, to be honest. So for them, I've just kind of like left that door open. But really, it's just trail riding. Working them on the ranch. They might help me push some of the cows down. If we're doing, and that's pretty much it. So they're purely recreational.
Yeah.
My wife's horse does also drive, so he pulls a carriage, and sometimes he'll go like for the stock show and rodeos and do stuff like that. But really, they're just pets.
Nothing wrong with it.
There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing.
That's right.
That's what we tell people. Like, people are like, oh, young Black equestrians, do you do eventing or dressage? It's like, no, I just ride.
Right.
I just ride my horse. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
And we stress that so much. Like, you can make a difference. You can do things. You can still have value in this industry without being a competitor. And it's not saying there's anything wrong with competing, but there's a lot of people who that's a barrier. There's a financial barrier. There's a accessibility barrier. We talk about the fact that you have value despite those barriers. It doesn't matter which side you're on. you're still
Amen.
valuable as
Absolutely.
a horse person. So I feel like that's one of the resounding messages with our podcast. Like, you don't have to do all that to be great. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the crazy thing is, like, that is the vast majority of horse owners. Like, they're not competing every Saturday earning
Yes,
ribbons. Yet
exactly.
that's who so many horse owners aspire to be. When most people, you know, it's like, hey, let's just go chill and ride, you know.
Yeah, and there's so many competitors who cannot do that.
Yes,
Their horses cannot go chill and ride. They like have screws loose in their little tackle box of a brain, and
yep.
like they can't. So it's just like, you know, you just pick where you wanna stay. But I like to just go walk through the woods. Like that's my jam.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so now we're gonna get into the Derby round, and so the
All
Derby
right.
round is just quick questions. You choose one or the other. First thing
Okay.
that comes to mind. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So here we go. English or Western?
Western.
Solids or spots?
Solids.
Bays or grays?
Grays.
Brown tack or black tack?
Brown.
Sponge or curry brush?
Curry brush. No, curry brush.
Shine.
Hold on. There's different kinds of curry brushes. I want to make sure we're on the same curry brush.
Okay.
Because whether you're Western or English, you might call that curry brush something different. So what's a curry brush?
It's like the brush you put on your hand and it's got the spikes on it. The little
Yeah,
nubs.
curry brush. There we go.
Okay. Where are we? Okay, shod or barefoot?
So I can't just do a one answer. It depends.
I know.
I try to keep them barefoot as much as I can. And I know that I admire it. There's a huge barefoot movement, which is awesome. And I think that, but there are, and so many people disagree with me, but there are some horses who benefit in certain circumstances with having the support. It doesn't necessarily mean a metal shoe, but there are things that you can do structurally. So, okay. So that's my kind of.
Okay, that's fine. Long answer, long. That's cool. Bumper pull or gooseneck?
Gooseneck.
Rope halter or nylon halter?
Rope halter.
Wood fence or electric fence?
Wood.
What is your favorite piece of barn equipment?
Wow. I'm gonna plug myself. My steady stick.
Okay, we'll drop a link to that in the show notes.
That's my favorite piece of equipment. It has to be.
Okay. Next question. What is your favorite piece of tack?
Probably the rope halter.
Okay.
Yeah.
When was the last time you fell off?
Last time I fell off a horse was maybe 7 years ago. 7 years ago. It's actually one of my mentors who had a horse that was giving her a really hard time. She was like, "Noah, come ride this. Can you come ride this horse for me?" And I said, "Oh yeah, you know, I'll come take care of this horse, you know." And I'm there and I'm working with this horse and I'm doing the connection work and all this stuff. And I go to climb up on the horse, and you know, it wasn't my saddle or tack, and something in the like on the top of the fender that connected, and it was a mess. Anyway, it freaked the horse out. The horse ended up just throwing me like a like a rag doll, and that was the last time I got thrown off a horse. And then, like, my friend, my mentor, her name is Barb, an incredible lady. She felt so bad because when I fell, I went crashing into like the rails of the round pen. It looked a lot worse than it.
Yeah, they make a lot of noise.
But, you know, of course, like I hop up, I'm like, no, I'm fine. Everything's okay. You know, picking up my pride and everything. But yeah, that was the last time I got thrown off a horse, yeah. And then that horse ended up going over to uh, uh, John Lyons. And when John came and saw the horse, and he was doing an exhibition on that horse, and of course, he kept digging at me, being like, "Okay, Noah, you wanna ride this horse? You're gonna come on and show everybody." And so we were going back and forth about who's gonna get on the horse or climb the horse. Well, he was a rank little horse, but he actually ended up coming out okay. We kept working with him and getting him just more quiet and relaxed. There was one of these horses that came from a traumatic experience and needed, a lot more time and work and effort and overcoming some of those things to get him better. But just like in every other accident that most people have, it was like my fault. Like I should have checked the tack. It wasn't my saddle. I should have, made sure, because I put him in a bad situation, and it could have been a lot worse than it was. So
that's good. Glad you're okay. And the last question is, if money was no object, what is one horse-related purchase you would make?
I don't know. Maybe
I got everything I need. What's left?
I don't know. Okay, so I like to look at I forget what there's a real estate site that's really popular that you can look up everything on. I forget what it's called. Zillow. Look at Zillow. And I saw this one ranch, and it was like, it's like in like nowhere, Texas, and it's something ridiculous, like 15,000 acres or something like that. And it had like an airstrip and a helicopter pad and 2-story barn. So yeah, that would be it. That's a horse. I'd buy that and then figure out the taxes later, I guess.
Texas is huge.
It is. Like, I didn't even know that like you could have like 15,000 acres. Like it was ridiculous.
Yes. I know someone he's like, yeah, I just got 4,000 acres, and I'm like in one spot, like one circle.
Right.
One. He's like, yeah, it's just, just one property.
They don't do that around
here. They don't do that around here. There's not enough left.
Sure.
But yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on
y'all.
to our show.
This was great.
Well, I'm just so glad that you guys had me. I'm super I've had a chance to listen to a couple of y'all's podcasts, and man, y'all do an incredible job, and you have some really cool guests on there. So I'm excited because I have a lot of good driving listening to do. So it's cool being able to connect within our community with other people by hearing their stories, and you guys do a good job at bringing those stories out. So thank you all for having me. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Young Black Equestrians. Head over to our Facebook or Instagram pages and let us know what you thought about that episode. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and have the opportunity to be featured in our next episode.